about that book, which is kind of nice. It's a bit of an accolade.
Well, what's your take on Buchenwald and Auschwitz and Dachau and so forth, the great concentration camps where so many are supposed to have been put to death?
Yeah, some topics are still under development. They're still being discussed. People are still presenting new information and asking new questions. So that particular topic of how many Jews were killed, I tend to steer away from. But the Jews claim that 6 million Jews were killed. But, I've heard figures that there were just 250,000 Jews in Europe at the time. But if 6 million Jews were killed, 26 million Russians were killed, more than any other country.
Yeah.
So shouldn't we be creating a separate country for Russians?
Except they have one.
Have we got a Balfour Agreement for Russians? And no, we don't. Well, Stalin was an illegitimate Rothschild as well. He was the son of Baron Edmond de Rothschild, who was a French Rothschild. He was also possibly the father of Chairman Mao.
Really?
Making Stalin Mao half.
You have a genetic theory of the origin of some of the great monsters of history.
Oh no! I've studied their origins, and I've studied the claimed origins and the claimed families, and what all of these people, including like Bill Clinton and now Barack Obama, is that all of their family histories are so confused, absolutely confused. None of the world leaders seem to have a straight history. Like I have one father and one mother, and I lived in this town all my life, and I'm honest to God, and this is where I am at the top of the heap. None of them are like that. They all have massively confused histories, and there's arguments now whether Barack Obama is even born in America or Hawaii. He seems to have been born in Africa.
Kenya.
That's the latest theory, but there's other theories that he was actually a clone of Pharaoh Akhenaten and was created in Fort Leavenworth with horse blood over a couple of generations.
With horse blood? Did I hear you correctly? With horse blood?
Horse blood, thoroughbred horse blood. Like blacks had no status in World War II. So they would be marched into Fort Leavenworth for blood tests. It's called blood farming. So they'd go into Fort Leavenworth and they wouldn't come out. So they were testing horse blood mixed with human blood from 1942.
I wouldn't, based upon my knowledge of genetics and evolution, that seems to me highly improbable. Not that the experiments might not take place, but that they could have any kind of success.
Well, I'll put it to you this way. Time is asked about face. And what we get has already been invented for 20 to 150 years beforehand. And in the case of mummification, what the Egyptians were doing in 3500 BC, we still can't do now. Like Lenin's body is supposed to have been mummified in about 1927, but I think it's 22. It's rotting. The body's rotting, right? So what they've found with the ancient mummification, when they've done it right, is that they can actually take cells off it and clone off those cells. And we're talking about things like, cloning animals at the moment, cloning your favourite pet. But the information that we're getting about cloning has actually already been done on humans and already been done 50 years back.
Could it be the case, Greg, that the Egyptians were better at mummification in part because of the arid atmosphere that, in the tomb, that there were just the right conditions to preserve bodies if they were prepared properly, and that in Moscow that's not the case?
Well, Moscow's cold. The Egyptian desert is hot and dry, but downstairs underground it's just dry. But the Egyptians were also taking the brains and the guts out and doing it absolutely expertly, absolutely brilliantly.
Yes, because those organs would be among the first to decay and rot in the body.
Yeah, but 5,500 years ago, they were doing a better job of it than we can do now.
Yes.
And what modern science has shown is that we can grow things off the cells of mummies. And if we get a cell of a mummy, we can turn it into a live cell and grow something off it, like another human. The theory is in Antarctica now that they're growing an adult human in 24 hours. That's the theory. I just put it out there.
24 hours?
24 hours. Yeah.
Think,
so
yeah,
you can tell the military truth and the high-end military intelligence truth because they release the truth through fiction, through fictional movies, especially action fiction movies.
Yeah.
So watch those. Like for instance, like the DEA actor Bruce Willis. He's always got the latest in military equipment. We don't know about it yet, but it turns up on film. Turns up in film to scare off opposing armies. You know, and it's just a fantasy. And then 10 years later or 15 years later, we find out that it's standard military issue equipment. And that happens time and time again.
Well, there are, it seems to me, insuperable obstacles to developing an adult in 24 hours. We don't have to buy that, but, you know, I mean, not even the acquisition of the kinds of information you'd need to master language, behavior, skills, and all that couldn't possibly occur in 24 hours because there we're talking about an interaction between the phenotype and the environment to acquire traits that aren't solely genetically based, but
you can plant a language in a person in 3 days.
I'd rather doubt that, Greg.
No, it's true. They even have courses in French, 3-day immersion course in French. This is going back to 1988. And you spend 3 days in there only speaking French. You come out speaking French. But the military stuff, that's civilian stuff, right? The military stuff is 100 times more powerful. And the whole education system that we have as civilians, we're learning crap stuff and we're learning by the slowest methods. If you, for instance, occupy the conscious mind and the unconscious mind with things like music and lights, and then download stuff into the subconscious, it's incredibly rapid. You can actually train someone into an international position in 10 hours.
Well, you know,
I know this because I've dealt with the Russians on it. Like, you know, I went to Russia at the end of the Cold War and had lunch with the KGB and interviewed them, and we exchanged stuff. And then one of them flew out and stayed with me for a month and briefed me, and then trained me into a couple of positions of my choosing.
On a connection,
it's called reconstruction of the subconscious.
On a connectionist model of the brain, you're talking about the synaptic connections that are going to, where you're going to have neurons that are stimulated to a certain degree before they make the connection, and it's the patterns of activation that bring about behavior or that can be stimulated to represent things in the environment. All this takes an enormous amount of time to develop in relation to any patterns of neural activation that aren't innate, genetic, and inborn.
Yeah, but what you've just said is what we've learned in civilian education, how things happen with synapses connections. But with the subconscious, you can download huge amounts of information, lifetimes of information, in, it used to be 10 hours. In 2002, it was 10 hours, so they've probably got it down now to an hour.
I doubt that very much, Greg. I'm just
telling you this what it is. You know, I'm telling you this is what this is military intelligence information as opposed to civilian stuff.
Well, I'll just tell you that, you know, you've published 7 books, I've published 28, and that I have done a lot of work on the theoretical foundations of computer science, artificial intelligence, cognitive science, most recently on evolution and mentality. You might look at a couple of my books, Philosophy and Cognitive Science, Computers and Cognition, and most recently, The Evolution of Intelligence. Are humans the only animals with minds, Greg? And I'll just say, I find it very difficult to, you know, take those conjectures or hypotheses seriously. Not that your other work is thereby contaminated. I'll just say, in relation to my own research, I find it highly doubtful that those claims